we launched it. It exploded on the first day, which was breathtakingly exciting. On the first day of Google Maps, we almost destroyed search. There was this guy in the data center with his finger on the kill Google Maps before it kills Google search. And this was kind of scary. So then what happened is that
every day, billions of people just like you open an app without thinking twice. And it quietly shapes where we go, what we do, and how the world moves. Today on Founders and Builders, we're joined by Lars Rasmussen, co-founder of Google Maps. Lars and his team at Where2 Technologies, before they sold to Google, built one of the most important pieces of the modern internet today. Now, this is a super special episode that we recorded live in Slush back in Helsinki, and Lars takes us behind the curtain on what it really took to build Google Maps in those early days, back when the web was super slow, smartphones didn't exist, and the moments where it could have gone a completely different way. And you should really know that in May 2026, Lars is hosting a huge event that you don't want to miss, Panathenea, a conference bringing together over 10,000 founders and builders in Athens, Greece. I'm Joe, this is Founders and Builders. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to smash subscribe down below, and now let's get into it.
You know, it's not every day that you get to sit down with a founder of a product that we all know and love every day, but most people won't know the Google Maps story. It wasn't Google Maps first, it was Where2 Technologies that you sold to Google. Yes. Can you take us back to that moment? Yes. I'd love to start there.
Yes, it's been a few years. But yeah, it started in, you remember the dot-com bubble in the late 90s? Yeah, same here. But when that crashed, my brother and I were working for a startup in Silicon Valley that died, laid us off, and then no one was investing. It was a terrible time in tech. Nasdaq was like losing 80% of its value, and my brother had this idea. So he's older, but a college dropout. Okay. He's the man with the big idea. I have a PhD from UC Berkeley, so I can, do the small ideas. And he said, look, let's work on maps. We want to make maps bigger and better and faster. And I know, so back then MapQuest was king of maps in the US. I think in the UK you had multi-maps back then, and they do these websites with a little map here and a bunch of text around it. And if you wanted to move the map, you had to reload the entire page. And my brother had these very simple ideas back then for how to make the map take up the whole screen and move, dragged, and then put the information on top of the map so you can interact with the map's markers, get information to hover over the map. Very simple.
Well, it sounds like, technology that we take for granted today.
Right. But back then it was quite novel. And in particular, it was novel to do it in a web browser. Like this was actually what we built became known as Ajax, like a particular way of building websites. Because back then the web was really a document browsing platform. And this, what we did with Google Maps and also maybe Gmail that came out around the same time, a little bit before, started making the web into an application hosting platform, right? But this was the idea. He said, let's do this. When he tells the story, it took me days to realize his genius. I remember immediately getting it. And so we set out to work on this, just the two of us. We got two friends from Australia, of all places, involved, had no money. So we were working for sweat equity. Did a few programs, so like contracting gigs on the side to fundraise for it. And we tried to raise money once after 6 months of prototyping, completely failed. Tried to raise money twice after maybe a year and a bit of prototyping. Now we got some traction with a big VC in Silicon Valley. Like a really big one is still around, one of the best in the world, love them to pieces, and they got interested, and we went back and we did a lot of meetings and we started talking about them maybe investing. I remember the deal we discussed was 2 million euros, $2 million for 40% of the company. Which would be a terrible deal by today's standards, but back then it was magic, right? Because it was such a big deal and it helped start Google and Apple and insanely good firm. But we didn't quite make it. You know how VCs have funnels, right? So they get thousands of applicants in, and back then they only invested in 10 companies, 10, 12 companies a year.
You don't say they didn't have the conviction to make the investment.
No, look, we got to like this, we actually asked them every time we had a meeting, where are we in your funnel? And they always knew exactly, right? And we got to the 70% mark. And then what happened was right then, as we were having these discussions, Yahoo was still a big player back then. They launched a small change to their map site, which they hadn't touched for 4 years. And that was enough for us to fall off the funnel right there at the 70% mark. And they had actually explained to us that, look, one of the ways when you're raising money, you get to sort of the term sheet phase and you enter due diligence, then they tend to go and poll their big portfolio companies, are you working in this space? Informally, without telling them why, right? And then if one of their existing companies is active in your space, that's often where it fails. For this particular VC, others will operate differently, right? But they didn't like to have competitors in their portfolio.
Right.
And also you could argue that if a big company is rumbling in your space and you didn't know it, maybe the window is smaller than you thought it was, right?
And were they in Yahoo at the time?
Yeah, they were in Yahoo. They're one of the big early investors in Yahoo. And they didn't actually have to go poll them because they had the crazy sense of launching this after not touching their map site for 4 years. They launched this change right as we were getting close to, I like to think we were getting close to closing this deal. We don't know, right? But so the thing fell apart. Also, this firm, back then at least, very famously made all of its investment decisions by consensus. And they had like 12 partners. And so it only took one of them
To veto the
to
deal?
veto the deal, right? And that's what happened. We never even knew who it was, never got to talk to this person. And then, but then what happened was we turned out to be a blessing in disguise that instead of investing, it wasn't actually the firm itself, but someone that had introduced us to Ram Shriram. He said, well, the same reason this company doesn't want to invest, namely that Yahoo is rumbling in your space, is going to want Google want to buy you. Because back then Google had nothing in mapping, and Google loves a leapfrog.
Yeah.
And then he said, if you take your ideas and technology and marry it with Google's, a big company already back then,
Sure.
right? Then Google will get to leapfrog Yahoo. We're still a big competitor of Google's back then. And
Sure.
so 2 days later, we were sitting in front of Larry Page. We were huge fans, of course, right? And we were pitching this thing, and he was like our last option. And I remember he didn't say a lot, but he had this. We actually hadn't built it originally as a website. It was actually like a C++ application that you would download, install on your laptop. These were long before the iPhone.
Sure.
You install it on your laptop next to your web browser.
Yeah.
And Larry,
This is long before running complex web apps. Was even the term web app was popularized?
Exactly. Yeah, no, there was no such thing. And then, but Larry was like, look, I like the way you think about maps. I like what you build, but Google is really a web company. Are you sure you can't do this on the web? And so then we spent 3 weeks rewriting the whole thing. Actually blew our own minds. We didn't think this was possible, but
Right.
you're in a heightened state of motivation, right? Completely broke without any other option than selling this thing to Google, right? And so we somehow managed to redo the whole thing, went back, showed it to Larry and his team, and then they bought us. And then instead of Where To Maps, it became Google Maps, and it took off like crazy. And it's an intense source of pride that, like I like to say, pretty much anywhere I go in the world, maybe not China, someone always has a story of getting lost with Google Maps. And so we touched a lot of lives.
I can't imagine the satisfaction that you have knowing that the way that all of the applications that everybody uses today, if it's anything to do with mapping, direction, location, GPS, it's almost always either directly pulling from Google's application or using your API in the back end. I mean, how does it feel to have?
Oh, look, I mean, it's hard to describe. It's a sense of pride, a sense of impact, and that thing in particular with Google, with people using our APIs, happened very early on. It's one of the most exciting things. We didn't even have an API when we first launched Google Maps back in early 2005. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary. The website did not have an API, but because it was on the web, it was quite easy to reverse engineer, and people did all these mashups. And those mashups, apart from being just cool, they attracted a lot of press. Every time someone did something sort of on the gray zone, we didn't really allow this, but then get
What
tons
could a
of press.
mashup look like?
Well, back then it was typically someone doing a map of a thing in the beginning. So someone would make a map of all of the great pubs in somewhere. And then later people would start making more application-like things, like tracking wildfires, for example, or where to go play soccer in my hometown, or how to deal with like where are the ambulances, or even see, where are all the traffic cameras and things like that. Stuff you could not find yet on Google Maps. People would do this. And in the beginning, this was technically not allowed. I think I can say freely now that we loved it. And in fact, this blog
It's like the perfect example of open source, right?
Exactly, yeah, and it got us so much love and press, right? And every time one of these things would launch, get all this press, and then people would also go check out maps.google.com and go, wow, this is really quite good. And so our traffic would go through the roof. And then, of course, part of what had to happen was we had to negotiate a deal with the data provider. So back then we licensed the data from companies that did car navigation systems.
Sure.
And we put that in Google Maps, and we had not gotten permission to do an API in the licenses. We had to go fix that. It was not so much about software as it was about that deal. So we fixed that, launched the API, and I think this may still be true. I'm not that close to the team anymore, but I think more than half of Google Maps consumption was through API, through some other property. Just great. I love unleashing that kind of productivity in the world.
What was, because I just want to bring us back to that moment in 2005.
Yes.
What was the hardest challenge that unlocked the growth of Google Maps?
It's a super good question. So we launched it, and it exploded on the first day, which was breathtakingly exciting. In fact, I'll tell you a fun story. So Google didn't have any maps, anything, right? So we thought we'll do an end-to-end test the night before the launch.
Okay.
So we actually went live with maps.google.com, but we didn't tell anyone. There was no links to it and anything. So we thought we could test it in silent and quiet. And almost immediately a blog appeared. Google has launched Maps. And so it turned out there was this blogger who guessed that eventually Google will launch a map site. And of course it's going to be a maps.google.com. So you had a robot pinging maps.google.com. And so when we went live, he got to blog about it before we even...
Wow, he was ready for that.
It was crazy. And then, the blogosphere blew up and everyone came. And even before we had announced the launch or put any link anywhere on Google's properties, it just blew up. And I think on the first day, actually, so Google didn't have a lot of bandwidth back then because it was just search, right? So you'd have 1,000 computers answer a search and just get these 10 blue links. So they didn't need a lot of bandwidth out of the data centers. And then we Google Maps launched, suddenly all of these images of maps were coming in and out. And so on the first day of Google Maps, we almost destroyed search. There was this guy in the data center with his finger on the kill Google Maps before it kills Google search button, and we just barely survived that day. But then what happened, and this was kind of scary. So then what happened is that the organic traffic growth was negative. Every day we would see a few less users, and then occasionally something like a mashup would hit the press and we'd see a spike, and then it would go down and down and down. So there was clearly something missing for it to grow on its own. And we guessed all of these features that were missing. We listened to people as complaints. We built all these features. And then, do you know Brett Taylor? No. So he runs a $10 billion startup called Sierra now in San Francisco, an AI, Sierra.
Oh,
It's an AI startup for customer service. He's also the chair of the board of OpenAI. He's a pretty big deal in the world. And back then, he was the product manager on Google Maps. So he had been at Google when Google were thinking of buy us, and he was super young, right? But he was the guy who persuaded Larry and said, "No, we got to buy that thing." And then when they bought our company, he joined our team, smartest guy I've ever worked with. And of the many anecdotes supporting that fact, was that Brad said, guys, it's speed. It's not features, it's speeds that's missing. Because our maps were much faster moving around, but the initial load time, so we had to load a lot of JavaScript and then render the maps were done. If you just had one question, loading the map the first time was actually slower than MapQuest.
Right.
And so although he was a PM, he was also a super sharp computer scientist, right? So he re-architected the whole thing so that the initial load would be static HTML, and then we were bringing the JavaScript afterwards and then make the site dynamic. And that I think 10x or cut the initial load time by 90%. And right then the thing started growing.
Yeah. Again, novel engineering practices at the time.
Yes.
But even sites like, I think, Perplexity, Aravind, he talks about how to kind of dynamically load search results within Perplexity to give that user that hit of dopamine. We have you covered, and we can load everything on the back end.
Yes, that's exactly what. And Brett did that thing, and we have been going down for a whole year after that initial explosion, down, 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 down. And then we launched that thing maybe 9 months after the initial launch. And then it's been going up ever since. And it took more than a year to get back to that first day level of traffic. But now you can't even see that, right? I think that first day of traffic was like 10 million users or something, but now it's 3 billion or something. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, right? So the power of Google's brand, and obviously a good product, right? But that attention with the blogger came from Google.
Super quick one from me. As you know, every week on Founders and Builders, we ask our listeners what is one tool or one product that they couldn't live without. And this week, I'm super pleased because I use this tool all the time. It's Canva. If you've ever needed to design anything quickly, a social post, a pitch deck, even your CV, Canva is the tool. They started a long time ago with a drag and drop design app, and they've now turned into a full creative studio. Teams are running entire brand kits on there. And with their new AI features, you can whip up visuals faster than ever before. So if you're interested in learning more about Canva, check out the link in the description below. And now let's get back into the episode.
So the reason that we met, Lars, is one of your team about Panathenea, the event you now run every year in May in Athens, which I'd love to hear more about.
Yes.
And for sure the listeners would love to hear more about.
For sure.
And speak at or attend or sponsor.
Yes, please.
Where did the kind of inspiration for you to invest in the startup ecosystem come from originally?
Well, look, I had some success with this thing. I went to work for Facebook, it's quite well paid. So I had a little bit of liquidity that I could start investing in other companies. And it started as a side gig. And one of my first investment down in Australia, where I lived for a while, was Canva. You probably know Canva, right? So I helped them get their initial tech team together. Mel and Cliff, the founders, are not techies. And so I introduced them to Cameron, their third co-founder. He was actually on my team at Google in Australia. And then Dave Herndon, who's now their CTO, invested, and it started also taking off. And then I had a brief few years where when Canva started taking off, I thought, oh, I'm good at investing, which was a theory I very quickly disproved, but cutting all these checks. And
The base is looking pretty good so far.
Yes. I mean, look, that's, a lot of angel portfolios look like this, where you have this one winner that's, everything. Well, I like to think I have a more measured approach now, and I left my builder status maybe 5 years ago. By then I had, 50 or so investment in a portfolio that I'd done over a decade part-time. And so since then, maybe we've reached 100 now. And I moved to Athens. My wife, my Greek goddess wife is from there. We moved there 5 years ago. And
What's her name?
her name is Elomida.
Elomida?
Yes.
That's a beautiful
name. I know, yes. She's a proper Greek goddess. And we moved there.
The tale goes that you actually met when you were studying
right.
back in Edinburgh. What a place for, a Danish and a lovely Greek lady to meet. That's awesome.
It was great. We were both grad students back when we were in our early 20s, which has been a few years. And we fell madly in love to move to Greece.
10 years.
Exactly. Actually, I moved to Greece in 1992 in pursuit of said goddess. Didn't work out back then. Took a 20-year break. Then we got married. And now in 2001 or so, we moved back there to Greece and found a super cool startup ecosystem, very young, but very vibrant, very hungry, still finding its footing. There's maybe 500-700 startups there, 40 active VCs, the first unicorn starting to emerge. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think the Greek ecosystem is about where Sydney was when I invested in Canva. Like, there had not really been, Atlassian was starting to take off, right? That became the first proper unicorn, and then Canva now. And I see the same thing happening in Athens with this young, hungry, vibrant, crazy ecosystem of startups. And then we thought, so I've invested in maybe 10 or 12 Greek startups, but we also got interested, my wife and I, we do this work together, we got interested in what can we do to help the whole ecosystem grow even faster. And then we looked at Helsinki, where we are now, at Amazing Slush, right? And everyone here in the ecosystem gives Slush credit for really exploding a young ecosystem, 15 years ago when they started, right? And we thought, look, Greece is really good at hospitality. Why don't we try to do the same? And actually, exactly a year ago, / last year, I came here with this idea. Greece should do something like this. We met Peter Vesterbacka, who's one of the founders of Slush. And he explained, while he was also being interviewed by German TV on the other side, right? He explained how Slush works. It's a non-profit. It's staffed entirely by students, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think this year they have 13,500 attendees.
Crazy.
They have about 200 volunteers.
That's crazy.
And actually, before we started shooting, you said when you realized that you wanted to move from, builder to evangelist and kind of enabler, you asked a bunch of your founder friends, like, how did Lisbon become so popular in terms of a place to start a company and invest? How did Helsinki become? And it all came back to Web Summit and Slush.
Web Summit and Slush, yeah. And in fact, my good friend Simon Schaefer, who's here somewhere, he builds these physical startup hubs called Factory. Like he takes abandoned factory space, turns it into a physical hub for startups. And he's in Lisbon now. He just opened his factory there. And he used to be in Berlin. We built his first factory, and SoundCloud was his first anchor tenant. And founder of SoundCloud, Eric, is a very good friend. I'm an investor in his latest startup.
Is it Dance?
No,
A different startup.
That's his previous startup. Okay. The Dance is doing well though, but I think I'm not supposed to say this, I'm sure. But the Simon in Lisbon was like, yes, you need a big festival. Like if you can build a big festival in Athens, it will explode the ecosystem, right? And then we came here, met Peter, heard how it works, because I think Web Summit is amazing, but I think the spirit of Slush is there's something really intoxicating about how youthful it is, it feels like a big party, how enthusiastic everyone is. And Peter explained, look, it's because it's a nonprofit, it's because it's run by students, and it's because they're focused entirely on founders. How can we provide the most value for founders and builders to create a better tomorrow, right? And he offered to help actually. He said, look guys, if you can find a team with these 5 students in Greece who are up for building something like this, I will help. And we did. In fact, at Slush, we met Lefteris. I don't know if you met him, but so he's the CEO. You met Avi, our head of marketing, right? And we met him here at Slush a year ago. We talked about this, he, me, Peter, and my wife, and he was immediately, I can do that.
You made it happen.
And then we haven't slept since. And there was just 5 of them, all in their early 20s. They were still students, now they have graduated. But in just 5 months, from December last year till May, they built the first Panathenea in Greece, in springtime Athens. We got 3,000 people came from 44 different countries. Mel and Cliff, my friends from Canada, beamed in from Australia to headline the event. We had Thomas Wolf from Hugging Face, who's here somewhere. We had Laura from OpenAI. We had 11 Labs, Google DeepMinds, and a super cool researcher. And then we also really would like culture to be part of our festival. And so, do you know Kesha? American pop star.
Of course.
When I wake up,
it's TikTok.
TikTok. Yeah.
Stop. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
you're taking me back.
She came to Athens. She's starting a tech company, an app for musicians.
Oh, I didn't know.
To stay independent longer. So she came to Athens, spoke at Panathenea, announced her startup, actually found a technical co-founder at Panathenea, which I think is a crazy magic thing to happen in your first year event. Naomi Harris from London, like you, she's an Oscar-nominated actress, plays Moneypenny in the James Bond movie. She's also starting a tech company. She came, spoke about this, and it was just amazing. And then, of course, we had a huge big party in the end. And so the idea, by the way, so Slush is super cool. You walk through snow, you walk into this place, and it's like you're in a nightclub all day. And we are building it the same way, not-profit, student-led, founder-focused. But the brand is deliberately quite different, and exactly 6 months away from Slush, so that we can be, collaborators with Slush. And then the idea is that we're reimagining an ancient Greek festival. You know, the Olympics, it's a modern version of an ancient Greek festival.
And the Panathenea was the sister.
Exactly. It was the original startup conference, and it lasted for 1,000 years. It was at the height of it, it was a 12-day festival in Athens. People came from all over the Greek world, which was most of the world back then. And then they had this festival that was mostly about competing. but in everything, craftsmanship, engineering, mathematics, philosophy. They have poetry and music and film theater competitions. I always get that one wrong. It was a long time
We
ago.
didn't have it then,
They
Lars.
didn't have film. And then sports too. They had like chariot races, boat races down the harbor, foot races. So it really spanned technology and culture and sports. And these competitions, this is important that the spirit of this competition, they call it Amila, is not just glory for the winner. It's also about discovering the future. Right? Everyone would go away, build the best aqueduct they could or best naval ship they could. And then they would come together and through competition, figure out who's the best of the best. Everyone would learn from each other, make their connections. And then in the end, they had a really big party. Right? You can have some really good parties when you bring techies and cultural people and sports people together in one place with this common theme of innovation, of inventing the future, of advancing human excellence. And actually the whole thing back then was done in honor of Athena. She's the goddess of wisdom, of creativity, of innovation. She's also the patron goddess of the city of Athens. And the Parthenon, the beautiful old temple on top of the Acropolis, that's her temple. And they had a massive party. I like to think it was her birthday party. Some historians will disagree. But that's what we're reimagining. So, and I love this story that we're taking this ancient idea, like a key part of how ancient Greece invented its future, and we are modernizing that using these ideas from Finland of having a festival every year, nonprofit, student-led, founder-focused, and it's just an explosive thing. And in fact, a bunch of Finns that are student volunteers here are gonna, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but they're gonna come join us.
As everybody should. So I think
to help,
after
but
this
not just for the event, but to help us build it too, right? So they'll skip the Finnish winter and come build. And I'm hoping that some of the Greek organizers will then come to Finland and embed themselves with the Finnish team and learn, right? Because I mean, Slush is amazing. It's been around for 15 years. It is.
This has been our first
It is the
launch.
best.
We've absolutely loved it. We've met some great people like yourself. When is it happening in May?
It's the last week of May.
Okay.
27 to 29, that's the Wednesday through Friday of the last week of May. Beautiful time in Athens, not too hot yet. The trees will be blooming. We're actually, our second year event, we're expecting 10,000 people to come.
Incredible.
And it's right actually where the modern Olympics started in central Athens in 1896. It's a beautiful venue. There's an old marble stadium and there's this new classical building in the middle of a park where the athletes trained back then. And when you're right outside that building, you can see the Parthenon hovering above the trees. I mean, it's a breathtaking location. And you'll see like you can go and see the video of our first event. It has a super cool indoor-outdoor springtime Athens ancient ruins sort of vibe, kind of opposite the also super cool indoor nightclubby winter vibe of this, but the same ethos again, right? Non-profit, student-led, so let's all get together and help each other invent a better future through entrepreneurship.
If you had just a minute and a couple of sentences with every young person that's thinking about starting a company or is already on the journey of taking that step and starting their company, what would you say to them?
I would say, well, call me for your angel check. Come to Panathenea for your connections. But look, I'll say there is no more exciting time. Like I've been around for a bit, as you can tell, right? And there has not been a more exciting time to start a new company in tech than right now. And I kind of left the founders and builders stage a few years ago. I've never felt a bigger draw back in because of what's happening in AI and because of it's a proper technological revolution, breathtaking in its scope. And it really enables, and young people in particular, small number of people making crazy world-changing things. You know, we saw Anton, who launched Lovable just a year ago here, blow up like crazy. Actually, I wrote it's been a while since I wrote my own app, and I went on Lovable, and in like 2 days wrote my own little app. It's crazy. I mean,
I think one of the people that's really inspired me is Naval Ravikant.
Oh yeah.
I've originally founded AngelList, since done amazing things in the ecosystem. One of the things he talks about is permissionless leverage.
Right.
You know, like the internet and the ability to create is this huge lever that you don't have to ask somebody whether you can. You know, the costs have dropped to zero.
Yes.
And you can demo, not memo. You can make it, you can share it, get live user feedback, and build a company in a position that you could have never before. I mean, back in 2005, we laugh about the Google Maps days and where to technologies, but it really wasn't so simple to be able to prompt your way into a business.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, the progress we've seen in those 20 years is breathtaking. A lot of things are still the same, mind you. You know, this sort of like this optimism, just something you really feel here at Slush, right? The optimism that of course you can, right? Like you're saying with Naval Ravikant, right? Like, of course you can, and yes, you don't need to. You can you can just go and do it. And one thing,
right there.
One thing I love about Slush and also Panathenea is how youthful it is, right? And having students and new grads build this thing makes it even more youthful, right? And in fact, when I was here a year ago, and I think that's still the case. There's a lot of soul searching in Europe. Why are we not as good as the Americans? Why are we not as good as the Chinese, right? And last year there was this talking point floating around that America has 6 technology companies, the hyperscalers, all above $1 trillion market cap. It started in just the last 5 decades. And in that same 5 decades, Europe has produced maybe $100 billion market cap company, Spotify, right? And I think it's worth pointing out that of those 6 trillion plus hyperscalers that got started in the last 5 decades, 4 of them was started by students, right? Like Apple and Microsoft and Google and Facebook was started by students.
Right.
And I think one of the problems that's holding back Europe that we're overcoming now through things like Slush and Panathenea and just young people just like doing it, right, is that we don't have, I think, enough faith in our youth to build a better future.
Yeah.
And this, Peter actually explained this, that this was one of the motivations back when they started Slush, to ask the student population to build it, was because it's a very visible thing. Slush and Panathenea was national news in Greece, even before the first event, right? And at the first event, all the TV stations were there, it was all over the news, right? And you get to show to the whole country that yes, 21-year-olds can build something that impactful, right? And I think that helps shift the mindset to have more faith in the youth, but also gives the youth more confidence. And yes, they can, right? And so,
I love it, Lars. I love it. I'm so excited for Panathenea. I can't wait to come with the Founders and Builders team. We absolutely will be there. You need to be too. Last week of May.
Last week of May,
Athens.
27 to 29, springtime Athens. We will find you a studio with the Parthenon hovering
That'll be
above you.
fantastic.
The goddess will be waving.
We'll bring
at
the
you.
Founders and Builders team. We'll have a whale of a time. Lars, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was great.